Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're a young girl of Rome, chosen to serve as a Vestal virgin. The marble temples gleam in the sun, incense coils in the air, and the crowd whispers your name with reverence. Rome has made you holy, but what Rome gives with ceremony, it can take away with silence. The same city that bows before you will one day bury you alive for the crime of failing a vow. Before we step into that solemn world, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You're 10 years old when the Pontifex Maximus attendants arrive at your family's villa. The courtyard smells faintly of laurel and olive oil. The household slaves are flustered, rushing to sweep dust from the mosaic floors and polish bronze vessels that gleam dully in the morning light. You do not fully understand why so much fuss surrounds the visit, but you know it is something beyond the ordinary. Your father has been pacing since dawn, his toga freshly whitened, his expression solemn but betraying an undercurrent of ambition. Your mother has smoothed your tunic so often that the wool feels threadbare against your shoulders, and her hands tremble slightly as she tucks stray curls back behind your ears. When the priests finally step inside, their voices echo beneath the painted beams of the atrium. They do not look at your father first, nor your mother. They look at you. You feel their eyes weigh you as though you are marble waiting to be shaped into an idol. They ask you to stand, to hold out your hands, to look directly at them. You do as you're told, your knees stiff, your heart hammering in your throat. The household stands hushed behind you. Even the fountain seems to falter for a moment, the water trickling with uncertain rhythm. One priest murmurs something about purity, lineage, and omens. Another nods gravely. The decision has already been made. Your father's lips part with restrained pride, though his eyes flick nervously toward the priestly retinue. It is an honour for a family to give a daughter to Vesta's service. It signals to Rome that your bloodline is noble, unsullied, and blessed by the gods themselves. For your father, it will mean influence, invitations to gatherings he would not otherwise receive, a whisper of power in the forum. For your mother, it is more complicated. You see her smile, tight and faint, as though she is trying to conceal grief beneath a veil of dignity. She knows that you will never marry, never bear grandchildren, never sit in her place as matron of a household. You will belong instead to Rome, not to kin. Still, she says nothing, because the choice is not hers to make. It is not yours either. The Pontifex Maximus speaks formally, his voice low but resonant, naming you as one of the 6 who will guard the sacred flame. His words sound less like an invitation and more like a decree. Around you, your family bows their heads. You try to imitate them, though your stomach churns with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. It seems strange that so many grown men, their togas heavy with purple stripes, should look at you. A girl whose hands are still small enough to fumble with weaving and speak of destiny. Yet here they are, and here you are, and there is no turning back. The moment stretches, then breaks as your father guides you forward. His hand is firm on your shoulder, not cruel, but insistent. He leads you to the priests, who take you as one might accept an offering. You glance back at your mother, who presses her lips together until they whiten, her eyes fixed not on you, but on the floor. She dares not meet your gaze, for fear of betraying weakness before sacred men. The slaves avert their eyes entirely, as though even witnessing your transformation is too bold. You wonder for the first time whether you're losing more than you're gaining. The streets outside roar with life. Rome is never still, but today it seems especially loud. Traders hawk figs and olives from wooden stalls, donkeys bray as they pull carts laden with clay amphorae, and children dart through the alleys shouting games. Yet as your small procession passes, the noise shifts into murmurs. Faces turn toward you, brows arch, whispers ripple like wind across a field of wheat. You hear words like chosen and sacred and fortunate. You also hear envy. A woman at the edge of the crowd clutches her child tighter, muttering about the god's favour. A young man stares at you too long, his expression unreadable, before his companion pulls him back. You are not sure if these looks comfort you or make your skin crawl. The closer you draw to the forum, the more the city seems to lean in. The marble columns tower above, casting long shadows across the paving stones. You smell incense drifting from nearby shrines, mingling with the more earthly scents of sweat, dung and bread. The weight of Rome presses in from every side, reminding you that you're stepping not into a role, but into an institution older than memory. The Vestals have tended the flame for centuries. The city believes its very survival depends on their purity. And now, impossibly, that burden belongs to you. Your sandal slaps softly against the stones as you walk, the sound dwarfed by the shuffle of priests' robes and the clink of their ceremonial implements. You glance upward once, catching a glimpse of the Capitoline Hill rising in the distance, temples gleaming like marble teeth. You feel very small beneath it all, but also strangely exalted. People bow their heads as you pass, men with authority, magistrates with lictors at their side, step aside for you who yesterday was no more than a child in her mother's care. The contrast dazzles and unsettles you all at once. When you reach the house of the Vestals, the air shifts. The bustle of the forum dulls, muffled by stone walls and order. The entrance looms, carved and solemn, the doors opened wide as though to swallow you. You hesitate for half a heartbeat, the world outside pressing behind you, the unknown yawning ahead. The priests do not wait for your courage, they guide you firmly forward. The marble beneath your feet is cool, unyielding. The silence inside is heavier than any noise you left behind, thick with incense and the faint smoke of the eternal flame. You inhale and feel it coat your lungs, sweet and suffocating. Your father walks beside you for the last time. He whispers something about pride, about honour, about the family's name echoing through generations. You nod because you must, though his words strike your ears like ritual phrases stripped of warmth. Your mother is not permitted to accompany you inside, and so she lingers at the threshold, her hands clasped tight. She does not cry. She will not give Rome that spectacle. You wonder if she will still set aside a seat for you at dinner, out of habit, or if she will train herself quickly to forget. The ceremony of handing over is simple, almost cold. The Pontifex Maximus waits, his white robes gleaming in the filtered light, his face impassive as a statue. Your father places your hand into his, and in that instant you're transferred, like property or offering. The old man's grip is surprisingly strong. He does not look at you with tenderness, only with the weight of expectation. The marble walls echo his words as he formally accepts you into Vesta's service. Behind him, the sacred flame flickers, steady and eternal, as though mocking the fragility of your small life. You stand there, your heart thudding, your throat dry. You're aware of every detail, the cold of the stone floor beneath your sandals, the distant chanting of priests in another chamber, the flicker of lamplight against polished bronze. You are aware that your childhood has ended in a single gesture, yet you also feel something else, a surge of pride that you're not just another girl to be married off, forgotten in the records of household accounts. Rome itself whispers your name now. The city calls you sacred. And so, as your parents hand you over to the Pontifex Maximus, your chest swells despite the tremor in your hands. Pride rises, unsteady but undeniable. You are a Vestal now, honoured beyond all others, and the city murmurs your name with reverence, as if you are already part of legend. You step into your new life, where doors open for you alone. The threshold of the House of the Vestals closes behind you, and the world that once belonged to your parents is replaced by marble courtyards, silent corridors, and the watchful eyes of Rome's priests. At first, the silence is daunting, the way footsteps echo too loudly against stone, the way every voice seems hushed in reverence. But quickly, you learn that this hush is not emptiness, it is deference. People speak quietly here because they know this is holy ground, and you, improbably, are its guardian. The privileges of your station unfold gradually, yet with a certainty that shapes your every movement. You notice it first in the way slaves rush forward to part the curtains of the atrium when you approach, their eyes lowered, their hands quick to clear your path. Then in the way magistrates pause mid-stride to allow you passage, men with rods and fasces stepping aside for a girl draped in white. It feels strange, almost theatrical, as though the city has agreed to stage a performance in which you are always the central figure. You realise quickly that this is no illusion. It is law. Rome has decreed that the Vestals are sacred, and Rome enforces this with the weight of the Republic itself. Even beyond the temple, the privileges pursue you. You walk to the forum, flanked by attendants, and the crowd parts with a mixture of awe and wariness. No man dares touch you, not even accidentally. No one dares block your way. When disputes break out, men jostling over debts or contracts, the clamour stills as soon as your figure is glimpsed. Voices lower, hands drop, and hardened men bow their heads. The mere sight of your white stola, the ribbons knotted carefully in your hair, is enough to command obedience. Rome's most ruthless senators and generals would hesitate to cross your path, not for your sake, but for what you represent, the flame of Vesta, the fortune of the city, the gods' fragile patience. You are granted privileges denied to every other woman in Rome. You may move freely without a guardian, an extraordinary liberty in a society that demands wives obey their husbands and daughters obey their fathers. No man claims you. No man controls you. You feel this freedom keenly in the first weeks, when you step beyond the temple walls into the streets and realize no one shadows you with authority. No one demands to know where you're going. At 10, you're freer than the matrons who rule households of dozens. At 10, you're freer than your own mother. The irony does not yet sting. It tastes sweet, intoxicating. Gifts appear at your feet as if from nowhere. Wealthy citizens, eager to curry favour with the divine, send offerings of silver bowls, embroidered linens, or carved figurines of the gods. Farmers leave baskets of figs and olives at the temple gates, hoping that Vesta will smile upon their fields. Even emperors will one day kneel in the forum to praise the order you keep. At first, these gifts delight you. You marvel at the workmanship of golden brooches, at the sheen of imported silks dyed with Tyrian purple. You are reminded constantly that your role elevates you beyond ordinary Rome. You are told you live among luxury, yet you begin to notice that the gifts do not belong to you. They are not yours to keep or spend. They are tokens of veneration for the office, not the girl. You may wear them, display them, even admire them, but they never truly feel like possessions. They belong to Vesta, not to you. Inside the House of the Vestals, the privileges take subtler forms. You are given a suite of rooms, simple but more spacious than the cramped quarters of most Roman families. The courtyard garden is for you and your sisters alone, shaded by colonnades where you may walk in peace without fear of interruption. The fountain murmurs softly, and the laurel trees cast dappled shadows across the paving stones. In these moments, you feel as though you are breathing cleaner air than the rest of Rome, as though the temple itself shields you from the city's smoke and chaos. Your bed is not shared with siblings, nor your food measured sparingly. You are treated with dignity, as though your comfort is as important as your duty. It is not indulgence, but it is not neglect either. For a girl who once fetched water at her mother's bidding, it is enough to feel like indulgence. The privileges extend into law itself. You are untouchable. If any condemned prisoner happens to meet your gaze on his way to execution, he is pardoned instantly, his crime erased by your presence. Your footsteps alone can reverse death. The city has granted you this terrifying and magnificent power, and it weighs heavy, though you're too young to wield it with judgment. You learn quickly that your mere existence alters the fate of others, and that realization sits like a stone in your stomach. Power has been draped over your shoulders, but it is not a garment you can take off. It is a mantle that constricts with every passing day. There are pleasures too, small and immediate, that soothe your unease. You sit in the best seats, at festivals and games, placed where the breeze from the Tiber cools the heat of the day, where you need not crane your neck to see the spectacle. At banquets, musicians bow before you as they tune their lyres, and poets recite verses in your honour. The smell of roasted meats and honey cakes drifts towards you, while the crowd watches in envy. The people murmur reverently when you enter a room, their voices rising like prayer. Even Rome's highest officials cannot ignore your presence, for the flame you guard is considered older and higher than their offices. All this attention swells within you like incense smoke, both sweet and choking. You relish the way strangers bow as you pass, but you also feel their stares cling too long. You tell yourself you're admired, revered, even loved, and yet deep down, a quieter thought begins to creep in, that perhaps what they see is not you at all, but the robes, the vows, the mantle of sanctity. You begin to wonder whether anyone will ever see the girl beneath the white cloth, or whether she has already been swallowed whole by the goddess she serves. You push the thought aside for now. The city affirms your new identity at every turn. Men who once would have scolded or ignored you now lower their voices when you speak. Women who once might have judged your youth and awkwardness now whisper about your good fortune. Your name circulates in conversations far beyond your hearing, attached to words like holy, pure, and chosen. Even the coins in Rome's markets carry less weight than those syllables when spoken of you. The privileges are meant to make you proud, and they do, though pride is a fragile thing, easily bruised beneath the burden of expectation. For now, though, you are still young enough to revel in it, to mistake it for freedom. The first time you attend the Circus Maximus as a Vestal, you feel the full force of this privilege. The streets are choked with people, tens of thousands, pressing shoulder to shoulder, the roar of anticipation echoing off the stone. Chariots gleam in the sunlight, their horses stamping and snorting as handlers struggle to keep them steady. The crowd swells, restless, the dust of their sandals rising in a haze that blurs the edges of the city. You're guided past them, untouched by their jostling bodies, escorted directly to the front. Where others strain for a glimpse of the spectacle, you're seated where no sight is obscured, no noise too distant. The cushions beneath you are softer than you expect. The marble balustrade gleams with polish. The people see you draped in white, your hair bound with fillets of sacred ribbon, and they rise in acknowledgement. A wave of voices murmurs your title, some in awe, some in envy, all in recognition. For a moment you forget the solemn halls of the temple, the duties awaiting you when you return. For a moment you inhale deeply and find no smoke, no dust, only the sweet coils of incense burning in bronze braziers, drifting upward like the prayers of Rome itself. Hours later, the roar of the Circus Maximus fades, And when you return through the temple gates, the world narrows again. The marble walls close around you, the colonnades stretch long and silent, and incense hangs heavy in the air. Spectacle belongs to the people, order belongs to the goddess. Here there is no cheering crowd, no bowing magistrates, only the rhythm of duty. In the temple, ritual consumes your hours, tending the flame, fetching water, preparing offerings. The sacred flame burns at the heart of your life. Every morning, before the forum has truly stirred awake, you step barefoot across the flagstones to stand before it. The fire is not ordinary. It does not sputter or flicker as common flames do. It burns with a steadiness that unnerves you, as though it draws breath from something larger than air. You carry kindling, dried from the sacred grove, and you lay it carefully beneath the embers. When sparks leap, you feed them gently, coaxing the flame higher. Your hands move slowly, reverently, because if the fire ever dies, Rome will believe itself cursed. You are reminded daily that the survival of the city balances on the quiet motion of your wrist, the angle of your hand, the steadiness of your breath. After the flame is tended, you carry water from the spring of Egeria, drawn in a vessel too heavy for your small arms. The clay scrapes your palms raw, but you do not complain. The water must remain pure, untouched by hands or lips until it reaches the temple. You balance it carefully, watching the sunlight glimmer on its surface, hoping that no drop spills onto the dust. It is absurd, perhaps, that all the engines of empire, the armies marching across continents, the senators thundering in debate, are tethered to whether you, a 10-year-old girl, can carry a jar without faltering. But no one laughs at this absurdity. They bow before it. They enforce it with ritual. So you steady yourself and walk as though the weight on your shoulders is the weight of Rome. Ritual offerings fill the rest of your day. You knead dough for sacrificial cakes, grinding the flour with mortar and pestle until your arms ache. You pluck herbs under the careful eye of elder vestals, arranging them in patterns you must memorize perfectly. Every gesture matters. The tilt of the hand, the arc of a knife slicing fruit, the way you set bread upon the altar. If you falter, the others notice. If you forget, you are corrected with sharpness rather than patience, but soon enough, repetition dulls the edge of error. Your fingers begin to remember the motions before your mind does. The work becomes less a task and more a rhythm, as though the temple has trained your body into a kind of silent music. The house of the Vestals is alive with this rhythm. The older women move with slow grace, robes whispering across the stone as they pass. Their expressions remain calm, but their eyes flick constantly toward the flame, the altars, the doors. You mimic them, learning to suppress restlessness. The air is always thick with incense, mingling with the faint resin of burning wood and the sharper tang of bronze polished daily by servants. In time, these scents replace the smells of home, the sweat of your father's courtyard, the oil on your mother's loom, the smoke of hearth fires. They fade, replaced by the temple's perpetual haze. Time inside the temple feels unlike time beyond its walls. Outside, men shout over debts, traders call out prices, soldiers tramp through the forum, but within these marble chambers, everything seems slowed. The sun passes across the sky and casts its light through narrow windows, marking the hours not with noise but with shifting beams of gold. The shadows lengthen and shorten, the flame remains steady, and you learn to measure your days by the simple cycle of duty. Morning water, midday offerings, evening prayers, and the night watch by lamplight. You belong less to a clock than to a circle. The duties extend beyond the visible. You are taught prayers in whispers, memorized syllable by syllable, until they feel carved into your tongue. You repeat them as you grind herbs, as you sweep ashes, as you wait by the fountain. They are not meant to be creative. not meant to be personal. They are formulas, words honed over centuries, designed to soothe gods rather than comfort mortals. At first you stumble, the Latin phrases catching on your lips, but the elder Vestals correct you, forcing repetition until your voice becomes indistinguishable from theirs. In the silence of night, lying awake in your chamber, you sometimes murmur the prayers to yourself, as though afraid that forgetting a word might let the flames sputter in your sleep. Your body learns the discipline too. You rise early without complaint, kneel for hours on hard stone without shifting, and carry burdens beyond what you thought possible. There is no indulgence in weakness here. If you falter, you are reminded that you're not serving yourself but Rome, and Rome does not forgive. In time, you find yourself moving automatically, hands already reaching for kindling before dawn breaks, lips already shaping prayers before you're fully awake. Your body has become part of the ritual, as mechanical and necessary as the altar itself. Other Vestals move around you like sisters, though not all with warmth. Some are kind, offering gentle correction, smoothing your hair when it tangles, sharing fruit during meals. Others remain aloof. Their glance is cool, as though they measure you against impossible standards. You are reminded daily that your failures would be theirs too, that if you let the flame falter, or a ritual falter, all six would bear the shame. That pressure hangs between you, unspoken but always present. Camaraderie is tempered by vigilance. You cannot forget that the others are not only companions but witnesses. When you venture beyond the house for ceremonies, your duties accompany you. At public festivals, you carry offerings in procession, the crowd parting reverently. You scatter grain, pour wine, or raise your hands in blessing. You learn to ignore the heat of the sun on your neck, the weight of thousands of eyes staring at you, the voices murmuring as though you're not human, but a vessel through which Rome addresses its gods. You do not smile. Smiling is for children, and you are no longer counted among them. Despite the weight of ritual, there is comfort in its constancy. The repetition becomes a kind of shield, protecting you from fear by filling every moment with predictable order. When you wake, you know precisely what you will do, down to the smallest gesture. There is no space for indecision, no danger of chaos. The rhythm soothes you even as it confines you. At night, when you lie in your chamber and listen to the faint hiss of the flame beyond, you feel as though you have become part of something larger than yourself. Your heart beats with the same steady rhythm as the fire. Your breath rises and falls with the same quiet constancy as the smoke drifting upward. In these first months, duty replaces thought, ritual replaces freedom. You learn to lose yourself in the cycle, to let the days blur into one another until you cannot remember when one ended and the next began. You sense that years will pass this way, indistinguishable, yet you do not resent it, not yet. You are told that Rome's safety depends upon your vigilance, and you believe it. You believe that your hands, steady on the kindling, hold the fate of the empire. You believe that without your whispered prayers, the city's walls would crumble, and so you bend yourself to the rhythm, certain that you are indispensable. Outside the temple, you sense your elevated place. The marble walls you have grown accustomed to no longer feel like a barrier. Instead, they serve as a stage curtain, and when you step beyond them, the world rearranges itself around you. Bowing heads, lowered voices, magistrates stepping aside, all of it unfolds the instant you are visible in your white robes. In the stillness of the temple, you are only one among six. In the streets of Rome, you are untouchable. The contrast is sharp, almost disorienting, but it reminds you that your daily rituals are not private acts. They are performances for an entire city that believes its survival rests upon your purity. The forum is where the difference strikes you most vividly. Ordinary Romans, bustling and haggling, freeze mid-step when you pass. Merchants lower their voices, senators interrupt their arguments, debtors on trial pause with their mouths half open. Even those who moments before shouted with fury seem to shrink into silence, as though the sight of your white stola pulls the very sound from their throats. Men accustomed to command hesitate in your presence. Hardened veterans bow their heads. Young men, brash with pride, avert their eyes rather than risk dishonour. It is as though the city itself leans away from you in awe. The reverence has rules. It is not only courtesy, but law that you're granted precedence. The lictors of magistrates step aside when you cross their path. Fasces lowered in deference. Senators who have debated for hours over petty slights will make way without protest. Even the consul, clothed in authority, does not claim a higher seat when you approach. This precedence does not make you powerful in the way men crave. You cannot draft edicts, command armies, or sway votes, but it places you above them nonetheless, a silent figure whose sanctity they cannot ignore. Sometimes the respect feels ceremonial, like a mask they don for you alone. A man might bow as you pass, but the moment your robes vanish into a side street, his voice rises again, scornful, mocking, dismissive. Yet other times it feels sincere. You see mothers press their children forward to glimpse you, whispering blessings under their breath. You see slaves kneel in the dust, not out of compulsion, but out of trembling hope, that your presence might ease their misery. Whether genuine or contrived, the reverence clings to you like the incense that soaks your hair and robes. You carry it with you long after the moment passes. When you walk, the streets clear. When you sit, the benches of the theatre shift to accommodate you in places of prominence. When you ride in a litter to ceremonial processions, the crowds hush as though a god passes by. You know it is not you they honour, not the girl beneath the white veil, but the office you represent. Still, the illusion is powerful. You feel yourself lifted out of ordinary life, separated from the masses who jostle for bread and wine, the men who sweat in armour, the women who labour in silence at their looms. You are placed above them, elevated without lifting a finger. The privileges of your position extend into unexpected corners. You are allowed to own property in your own right, rare among Roman women. Wills name you as witness, another legal impossibility outside your circle. At times you're asked to accompany magistrates as they perform rituals, your presence a guarantee of divine favour. The city weaves your existence into its legal and spiritual fabric, so that your absence would feel like sacrilege. All this makes you more than an individual. You become a symbol of Rome itself, a walking assurance that the gods are satisfied. The public recognises this symbolism with both awe and fear. Strangers murmur blessings when they pass you, but some cross themselves as though shielding from bad fortune, wary of speaking too loudly near you, lest they bring ill luck upon their households. You are both revered and set apart, honoured and isolated. Even when surrounded by throngs, you remain curiously alone, as though a circle of silence follows you wherever you go. You walk among your people, but never with them, a sacred figure no one dares to touch. Children sometimes stare openly. They tug at their mother's sleeves, asking why you do not have a father guiding your steps, why no man keeps hold of your hand. Their mothers shush them, but you see the confusion in their wide eyes. They are raised in a world where women are never separate from men, never outside their shadow, never independent. Yet here you are, walking freely, head uncovered, commanding attention, without permission. To a child, it must look like freedom. To you, it feels like both liberation and surveillance. There are moments when the respect is overwhelming. During triumphal processions, when victorious generals parade through Rome, you sit among senators and priests, your white robes gleaming against the crimson of togas. Trumpets blare, captives shuffle in chains, Treasures glitter in carts. Yet the crowd still finds space to cheer for you. You wave grain in blessing, and they roar as though you yourself brought a victory. The general in his chariot basks in glory, but even he cannot fail to acknowledge your presence. His eyes flicker towards you, bowing slightly, as though even his triumph is not complete without your approval. It is difficult not to feel pride at these moments. The city bends towards you with such force that you forget your smallness, your youth, your lack of choice. You forget that you are a girl, pulled from your family and bound by vows you did not make freely. The respect blinds you for a while, convinces you that the trade is fair. You tend the flame, and in return, Rome lifts you above the dust of its streets. You kneel at altars, and in return Rome bows to you. The elder Vestals remind you constantly that this respect is sacred, not personal. They caution you never to confuse reverence with affection, never to imagine that the city loves you as a daughter. The city honours Vesta, not the vessel who bears her name. Still, you cannot help but feel the warmth of their gazes, the hush of their voices, the awe in their gestures. Respect may not be love, but it fills a space in your heart nonetheless, one that you did not know was empty until Rome poured itself in. When you return to your chambers after these public displays, the incense lingers on your skin, and you find yourself replaying the faces of those who bowed. The memory warms you even as you kneel once again before the flame. The world outside the temple may not know your name, but it knows your figure, your robes, your office. That knowledge hums like a secret under your skin. You catch yourself standing taller, moving slower, as though savouring the weight of attention. It feels like belonging, though deep down you sense it is only the illusion of belonging, as fragile as smoke. For now, you accept the illusion. You lean into the respect, convincing yourself that reverence is as good as affection, that admiration is as good as love. The city seems to believe you're enviable, and you let yourself believe it too. When you walk through the forum and men bow their heads, when women lower their voices and whisper prayers, when children gape in awe, you tell yourself, this must be worth the vow. You tell yourself that no marriage, no household, no life outside these walls could bring such honour. But as more time passes, you begin to realise that the stares last too long. Whispers never seem to fade when you pass. At first you tell yourself that this is still respect, the same reverence that makes men lower their heads and mothers press children towards you for a blessing. Yet after months of walking through the forum, the sound begins to shift. It is no longer simply admiration murmured behind your back, but something sharper, thinner, harder to ignore. You feel eyes lingering too long on your robes, not with devotion, but with suspicion. You begin to notice how silence falls not only out of awe, but also because people are craning their necks to see if you will stumble. The white stola that once felt like armour now feels like a beacon. Its folds catch the sun, impossible to overlook in a crowd, so that wherever you go, heads turn. You cannot melt into anonymity, cannot walk among Romans unseen. At the games, when you sit in the seats reserved for you, the people cheer, but you also catch mutters in the rows behind, speculative voices weighing your posture, your expression, your very breathing. At processions, when incense swirls and chants rise, you catch eyes that are not reverent, but calculating. You are meant to be holy, which means you're also meant to be flawless. Any flicker of humanity is cause for doubt. The longer you serve, the clearer the truth becomes. Rome does not grant you respect out of love. Rome grants you respect as long as you maintain the illusion of sanctity, and it will seize upon any excuse to strip it away. You feel it in the pauses after you pass, when voices rise again with a different tone, amused, sceptical, predatory. The same people who bow would relish a stumble. The same men who lower their eyes would raise them eagerly at scandal. Respect, you realise, is less a gift than a test, and you are always being tested. The scrutiny sharpens inside the house as well. Your fellow Vestals watch you with the same mixture of camaraderie and vigilance they always have. But now you notice the glances linger. If you hesitate in your prayers, if you falter in your ritual movements, their eyes flicker. They do not speak, but their silence is heavy. You learn to correct yourself instantly, to hide uncertainty before it becomes visible. You wonder if they do the same when you look at them, if they too mask their flaws with quick adjustments, each of you complicit in keeping up the illusion of perfect devotion. The priests watch too, though their scrutiny is colder, more clinical. They correct you without softness, reminding you in sharp tones that Rome cannot afford mistakes. Their eyes hold no affection, only calculation. You feel like a vessel inspected for cracks, as though they're waiting for a flaw to show, so they may discard you before the city suffers for it. Each ritual becomes less about reverence for Vesta and more about performing with exact precision under unblinking eyes. At first, you tried to ignore the murmurs, convincing yourself that Rome's respect outweighed its suspicion. But you begin to notice how quickly admiration and doubt intertwine. A woman in the market greets you with bowed head and lowered voice, then leans toward her neighbour with a smirk the moment you pass. Two young men hush their laughter when you walk by, then chuckle as soon as your back is turned, their voices carrying just enough for you to hear. It is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is simply curiosity, the city's hunger to see whether one of its sacred figures will fail. But curiosity can curdle into accusation with alarming speed. You also begin to understand how rumours travel. In the temple, you hear whispers before dawn of what people are saying in the forum. A Vestal glanced too long at a passing soldier. A Vestal took fruit from a vendor without paying. A Vestal touched the arm of a man she blessed. You know these are trivialities, fabrications even, but the city repeats them with relish. By the time such stories reach the ears of priests, they are already shaped into something dangerous. The truth becomes irrelevant. The performance of suspicion is enough. The knowledge presses on you during every outing. You move carefully, keeping your eyes lowered, your hands clasped, your expression serene. Yet serenity itself becomes suspect, if too rigid, too mechanical, as though you're concealing something. You cannot appear careless, but you cannot appear anxious either. You cannot seem too stern, lest they say you're bitter. You cannot seem too gentle, lest they say you are weak. Every glance, every breath, every twitch of your hand is weighed against the city's impossible scale. What once felt like freedom, the ability to walk unescorted, to move without a father or husband guiding your steps, now feels like a trap. You're free to walk, but never free to stumble. You are free to speak, but only in the voice Rome expects. You are free to sit in the best seats, but always under the eyes of thousands. There is no corner of the city where you are not observed. You cannot hide even in the crowd, for the whiteness of your robe separates you from the press of bodies as surely as a wall. Even the moments of respect begin to taste bitter. A man bows too deeply, and you wonder if he's mocking you. A magistrate steps aside, and you wonder if his politeness masks scorn. Children gape at you in awe, and you wonder what story their parents will tell about you when they return home. Every gesture that once felt like reverence now feels double-edged, its sincerity impossible to trust. You begin to see the whole city as a vast amphitheatre, with yourself trapped at the centre, surrounded by endless tiers of eyes that never look away. The respect that once lifted you above the masses now pins you in place. You no longer feel elevated but exposed, as though the marble steps you climb each morning are not a path to sanctity, but a pedestal you cannot descend. The incense that once smelled sweet now clings too thickly, reminding you of smoke in your lungs. The chants that once lulled you now echo like accusations. Where once you felt proud, you now feel hunted. Rome's gaze is not fleeting. It is eternal, and it is fixed on you. The chastity you swore becomes a weight pressing on your body. At first it felt abstract, little more than words repeated in a solemn ceremony. Phrases you could not fully grasp, but were told carried divine power. You thought of it as a vow to the goddess, a promise wrapped in incense and ritual, as far away from the body as the stars are from the earth. But as months turn to years, you come to understand it differently. The vow is not just an oath you spoke, it is a collar clasped around your neck, invisible but unbreakable, tightening with every breath you take. It governs every motion. When you pass men in the street, you lower your eyes, careful that a glance does not linger too long. When you bless a child, you keep your hands rigid, touching with only your fingertips, lest warmth be mistaken for tenderness. When you sit among the magistrates at games, you hold yourself with cold dignity, aware that even laughter might invite suspicion. Innocent gestures become dangerous. Casual moments feel like traps. It is not enough to be chaste. You must also look chaste, perform chastity, embody chastity so completely that no one could even imagine otherwise. The weight grows heavier as you age. At 10, the vow was easy, your body still childlike, your mind too unformed to truly understand. But as adolescence blooms, the city notices. You notice. Your body no longer belongs only to you, it belongs to the vow. Hips widen, breasts form, your face loses its softness. These changes, which in another girl would mark the approach of marriage, are in you regarded with suspicion. Where others see fertility, Rome sees danger. You are reminded constantly that desire, even unspoken, would be ruinous. Even if no act were committed, even if no whisper of truth ever existed, the mere possibility is enough to destroy you. This vigilance extends into your thoughts, and you begin to police your own imagination. If a soldier's gaze lingers, you stiffen. If you catch the scent of oil and sweat from a man passing in the street, you turn your head sharply, fearing even the hint of awareness. In dreams, when your body betrays you with sensations you cannot control, you wake with guilt sharp in your chest. You pray longer at the altar, hoping the goddess will not hold against you the accidents of sleep. You start to feel that your own skin is a liability, a fragile shell ready to condemn you at the first sign of weakness. Older vestals remind you of your burden with quiet severity. They tell stories of sisters accused, names stripped of sanctity, dragged into trial and condemned. They do not speak often of mercy, for there was none. Some were buried alive, others exiled, all erased from memory, save for whispered warnings. You realize that chastity is not simply a private vow. It is a performance demanded by an entire city, enforced by the harshest penalties Rome can imagine. The flame must not die, and neither must your purity. If one falters, both falter, and the city believes catastrophe follows. Even beyond Rome's walls, you feel the pressure. When you travel for ceremonies, crowds press forward, not to celebrate, but to examine. Farmers, artisans, slaves, they all stare as though they are measuring you, weighing your worth, searching for flaws. Their gaze reminds you that your body is no longer your own private vessel. It has become a symbol of the empire's fortune, as sacred as the flame itself. And symbols cannot have desires, cannot falter, cannot indulge in the humanity that pulses beneath their surface. The vow reshapes your relationships too. You learn to keep distance from your fellow vestals, even as you live beside them. Affection is discouraged, intimacy frowned upon. If you linger in conversation with another girl too long, if your hand rests against her shoulder, eyes turn. Whispers might follow. You withdraw, not because you want to, but because you must. The vow makes you solitary. Even within the house of the Vestals, you are surrounded always by others, but you are alone, locked within the narrow confines of your body. You notice how Rome wields the vow as a weapon. A man's ambition can ruin you with nothing more than a whisper. An enemy of your family can point a finger, and the Pontifex Maximus will be forced to investigate. You have no defense, for innocence is impossible to prove. Purity is not visible, but guilt can be imagined with ease. And once the accusation is voiced, it spreads like smoke in a dry field, carried by tongues eager for scandal. The vow does not shield you. It makes you vulnerable, the easiest target for envy, rivalry, or simple malice. Over time, you learn to move with stillness, to cloak yourself in composure so complete it feels unnatural. You laugh less, speak less, breathe more quietly. You learn to shape your face into serenity, even when fear gnaws at your stomach. You feel like a statue, carved not by artisans but by the gaze of the city itself. Your body becomes marble, not flesh, sculpted into something unchanging. And like marble, you know that once a crack appears, it can never be hidden again. There are moments when the weight is nearly unbearable. During festivals, when the air is thick with wine and the crowd shouts in joy, you find yourself aching with envy. Couples laugh together. Men boast of their conquests. Women gossip freely without fear. Their lives may be hard, but they belong to themselves. You realize with sudden clarity that yours does not. You tend the flame, you perform the rites, but all of it is done in the service of Rome's survival, not your own. Your vow has transformed you from a girl into a symbol, and symbols cannot hunger, cannot desire, cannot falter. You hear of others accused, their names spat in the forum, their bodies dragged into silence, and for a long time you think of those stories as warnings that belong to other women. They're cautionary tales meant to remind you of vigilance, not fates you will share. You tell yourself that your composure, your carefulness, your endless repetition of prayers will keep you safe. But Rome is not a city that needs truth before judgment. Rome thrives on whispers, and a whisper does not have to be true to be fatal. A whisper coils around your name. Perhaps it is born of an enemy's envy, someone who resents your family's prestige. Perhaps it is the casual malice of a neighbour, eager to tug down someone placed too high above them. Perhaps it is nothing more than idle speculation, sparked by a glance or a gesture misunderstood. The origin matters less than its existence. Once spoken, a whisper takes on a life of its own. It slides between conversations, clings to the air in the forum, threads itself into the chatter of markets. You hear it repeated in tones both hushed and gleeful, and you realise with dread that the city enjoys the idea of your fall. The first time the rumour reaches you directly, it comes from a slave hurrying past with her master's purchases. She does not meet your eyes, but her lips twitch as she mutters something that you barely catch. Your name laced with insinuation, spoken as though it is already tarnished. You want to stop her, demand clarity, but dignity forbids it. You walk on, each step heavier than the last. The flame you tend still burns. The prayers still fall from your lips, but you feel the weight of that stray comment pressing on your shoulders like lead. In the days that follow, the whisper grows. You feel it in the pauses that stretch too long when you pass through the forum, in the way conversations falter only to resume in tones more animated after you have moved beyond earshot. You hear laughter cut short, replaced by feigned reverence. The bowing of heads continues, but now you wonder if the lowered eyes conceal smirks. The gestures of respect that once reassured you now feel like a stage act. concealing mockery just beneath the surface. You search yourself for the cause. Did you glance too long at a soldier as he passed by the temple gates? Did your hand brush too closely against another during a ritual? Did you smile when you should have remained solemn? Each possibility blooms in your mind, replaying endlessly. You try to recall every moment of the past months, every expression, every word. The effort is futile, but you cannot stop. The vow you carry was already heavy. Now it becomes unbearable because you realize that innocence itself offers no defense. The city does not require evidence. The city requires only the thrill of suspicion. Your fellow Vestals grow quiet around you. They still move through the same rituals, their faces as serene as always, but you sense the shift. Their glances are sharper, their silence is longer. One of them hesitates before handing you a vessel, as though the clay might crack in your hands. Another corrects you too quickly when you stumble in a prayer, her voice sharper than before. None accuse you openly, yet you feel the distance widening between you. They fear that your fall could drag them down as well, and so they shield themselves with formality. The warmth that once flickered among you is extinguished. The priests notice too. Their corrections grow harsher, their inspections more pointed. They ask you to repeat your prayers again and again, their eyes narrowing at the faintest hesitation. They watch how you move, how you carry water, how you bow before the flame. You feel their judgment pressing against your skin, waiting for the slightest crack to justify what the city already whispers. The scrutiny that once felt like vigilance now feels like hunting. You begin to avoid the streets, but avoidance itself is suspicious. The absence of your presence becomes fuel for further rumour. If you do not appear at the markets, tongues wag that you're hiding shame. If you keep to the temple, they say you cannot bear the eyes of Rome upon you. If you smile during ceremonies, they say it is the smile of guilt. If you look stern, they say it is the mask of concealment. Every gesture, every absence, every silence is interpreted against you. The city that once revered you now delights in watching you unravel. At night, when you lie awake in your chamber, you hear the whisper echoing even through the marble walls. It slithers through your mind, repeating your name with accusation. You pray longer, you tend the flame with trembling precision, but the certainty of suspicion gnaws at you. The goddess may know your innocence, but the city does not care what the goddess knows. Rome cares only for the spectacle of punishment, the reassurance that it can still sacrifice one of its own in the name of purity. The rumours take on details you do not recognise. People speak of secret meetings, of stolen glances, of lovers whose names you have never heard. The stories grow like weeds, sprouting variations each time they are repeated. Some say you were betrayed by a lover who grew jealous. Others say you were seduced by an enemy of the state, conspiring against Rome itself. Still others claim that you confessed, though you never spoke a word. Truth is irrelevant. Narrative is everything. And the city loves a story of downfall far more than it loves the truth. Your family visits less often. When they do, their words are stiff, their smiles forced. You see fear in your father's eyes, not for you, but for the family's name. You see sorrow in your mother's expression, though she hides it behind dignity. You are reminded that your life was given over to Rome the day you were chosen, and now your fall threatens to stain them all. Their distance cuts you deeper than the whispers. The temple walls that once felt protective now feel like a tomb you inhabit while still alive. The moment comes when the whisper is no longer merely rumour, but accusation. A priest speaks your name with hesitation, repeating what he has heard. He does not call it evidence, but his tone carries the weight of judgment. The Pontifex Maximus listens, expression grave, and you know in that instant that your innocence does not matter. The machinery of Rome has begun to turn, and once it turns, it does not stop. The flame you tended still burns, but your place beside it has already begun to vanish. Overnight, you are transformed, no longer sacred, only suspect. One day the city bowed before you, the next it stares with open suspicion. And Rome, once a chorus of reverence, wastes no time in turning whisper into ritual. A trial is announced, not because evidence has been found, but because procedure must be satisfied. The Pontifex Maximus himself will preside, for no ordinary magistrate may sit in judgment over a Vestal virgin. Senators will gather, not to weigh truth, but to enact the solemn theatre of justice that Rome demands. You are summoned, and there is no choice in the matter. The day begins like any other, with the sacred flame still burning in the temple hearth, but this time you are not permitted to tend it. Another's hands feed the kindling. Another's lips whisper the prayers you know by heart. You are led instead into the open air, past marble colonnades that once seemed protective, but now feel like corridors of exile. The forum looms ahead, its stones bright in the sun, its voices rising with anticipation. The people cluster in groups, their heads turning as you pass. Their whispers are no longer cautious. They do not avert their eyes now. They want to watch. The procession moves slowly. Priests flank you on either side, their faces impassive, their robes heavy with solemnity. You walk with your head bowed, though not from reverence. You bow because to look outward would be to see the hunger in the faces of those who line the streets. They are not gathered for your defence nor for your comfort. They are gathered for spectacle. Rome thrives on spectacle, and your downfall is a kind of festival. The weight of your white robes feels unbearable, as though they mock you with the very purity you are accused of betraying. Inside the Curia, where the Senate meets, the air is thick with incense and judgment. The chamber smells of laurel and oil, but beneath it lies something harsher. The sweat of men gathered not to debate laws, but to watch a life be decided. The senators sit in their curule chairs, faces grave but distant, as though your presence is little more than another agenda item. Their togas ripple with folds of white, their purple stripes marking rank, but not one of them looks at you with anything resembling compassion. You are no longer a daughter of Rome, no longer a servant of Vesta. You are an accusation given flesh. The Pontifex Maximus presides at the centre, his chair elevated, his expression carved from stone. He raises a hand and the chamber falls silent. His voice carries easily, practiced from years of pronouncing judgments, of binding ritual to law. He names you, attaching the sacred title you once bore to the charge that now clings to you like rot. The contrast is stark. Only weeks ago, that title placed you above magistrates. Now it damns you, a reminder of the vow you're accused of breaking. His words are measured, deliberate, spoken not to discover, but to confirm. You stand before them, surrounded by men whose lives stretch far beyond yours. Men who have sired children, commanded armies, and spoken in the forum for decades. You are still young, not yet grown fully into the body Rome already condemns, yet you are placed before them like an equal, not because your voice is valued, but because your guilt must be made visible. The senators nod as the Pontifex speaks, their faces grave, their eyes unfocused. They are not judging you, they are witnessing a ritual, preserving the dignity of Rome by ensuring that a scapegoat is found. You wait for a chance to speak, for some moment when the truth might matter. But that moment never comes. The priests recount whispers as though they are facts. They name no evidence, present no witnesses beyond rumour, yet the words fall with the weight of stone. The senators murmur approval, some stroking their beards, others glancing toward the crowd outside. Their concern is not for you. but for Rome's reputation, for the preservation of the goddess's honour, for the maintenance of the illusion that the flame remains untainted. You realise, as their voices drone on, that your fate has already been sealed. You try to hold yourself still, to maintain the composure drilled into you during years of ritual. Your hands remain at your sides, your expression calm, your posture upright. But inside, your heart pounds so loudly, you're certain they must hear it. You remind yourself that to falter now would be to prove them right. You remind yourself that dignity is the only shield left to you. Yet dignity feels thin against the weight of so many eyes, against the ritual certainty pressing in from every side. As the proceedings continue, you notice how little the senators look at you. They speak of you as though you're not present, as though you're already absent, erased, a lesson rather than a person. Your name passes from mouth to mouth, stripped of warmth, transformed into an example to be held up against the city's fears. You are not allowed to answer, not invited to defend yourself. Your silence is not a right, but a condition imposed upon you, a silence that reinforces the presumption of guilt. The Pontifex Maximus raises his hand again, and the murmurs quiet. His eyes sweep the chamber, not to seek opinion, but to affirm consensus. He speaks of Rome's dignity, of Vesta's sanctity, of the danger posed by impurity in the sacred hearth. His words are not for you. They are for the Senate, for the people beyond the walls, for history itself. You are present only as a symbol, the necessary sacrifice that proves Rome remains vigilant. The longer he speaks, the more certain it becomes that this is not a trial at all. It is a ceremony of condemnation. When he finally turns to you, his expression does not change. He does not ask if you're guilty or innocent. He does not invite explanation. He simply states that suspicion alone is enough, that Rome cannot afford doubt in its holiest guardians. His words strike like cold iron, each syllable measured and heavy. You wait for the pause, for some chance to speak, but it does not come. Your lips remain closed, your throat tight, because to interrupt would be sacrilege, and sacrilege would only confirm their judgment. The senators nod once more, some with reluctance, others with the satisfaction of duty fulfilled. The verdict is not announced with fanfare, not shouted or debated. It is spoken with the calm inevitability of something long decided. You stand in silence, your hands trembling just enough to betray you, as the Pontifex Maximus pronounces your fate. The chamber does not erupt, there is no outcry. Only the low murmur of agreement, the steady nods, the grave expressions that mask relief. The verdict has been delivered. The senators disperse with measured dignity. The Pontifex Maximus withdraws behind the shield of ritual authority, and the chamber empties as though nothing extraordinary has occurred. But Rome does not bury scandal in silence. Rome loves spectacle, even cloaked in piety. The trial was only the prelude. The true performance begins with your punishment. You are led through silent streets, priests at your side. The procession has none of the triumphal fanfare that greets victorious generals, yet it draws the same crowds. Citizens abandon their shops and workshops to watch, drawn not by joy but by curiosity, sharpened into hunger. The silence is eerie at first, but it is not reverent silence. It is the silence of expectation, the stillness before a spectacle begins. Your sandals scrape against the stones, each step ringing out louder than it should, magnified by the hush that follows you. The city listens to your downfall in the rhythm of your feet. The priests do not look at you. Their eyes remain fixed ahead, their hands folded, their faces as blank as carved statues. They walk as though the act of leading you to your punishment is not cruelty, but ceremony, an extension of their sacred office. You feel more like an object than a person, carried along by ritual, as inexorable as the Tiber's flow. The irony is not lost on you. For years you walked in processions as a holy guardian of Rome's flame. Now you walk in one as a scapegoat, your sanctity inverted into shame. The city watches both roles with equal fascination. The crowd thickens as you pass into the forum. Men and women jostle for position, craning their necks to see you. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders, their small hands pointing. The same voices that once whispered blessings now murmur with speculation, delight, or judgment. You cannot catch all the words, but fragments drift through the air. Impure, betrayal, cursed. Some sound triumphant, others disappointed, as though your fall has robbed them of the certainty that sanctity could be preserved. Their gazes pierce you like spears, stripping away every layer of dignity you once carried. The white robes you wear, once symbols of purity, now feel like a cruel costume. They mark you more clearly than chains would, broadcasting your guilt in folds of spotless fabric. The veil across your head itches against your scalp, but you do not raise a hand to adjust it. Even the smallest gesture would be interpreted as arrogance, resistance, or defiance. You force yourself into stillness, each breath measured, though your chest tightens with every step. The crowd interprets your composure however it wishes. Some murmur that you're hardened and unrepentant. Others say you look broken. None say you look innocent. The priests chant as they walk, their voices droning in low tones meant to sanctify the ritual. To you, the sound grates like iron. The words are familiar, prayers you once spoke alongside them, but now they're spoken as though they cleanse Rome of your presence. Each phrase is a reminder that you are already erased in spirit, that only your body remains to be disposed of. You walk as though submerged in their voices, their monotony drowning out your own thoughts. You pass by familiar places, the steps of the Senate, the colonnades of the Basilica, the shrines where you once laid offerings. Each sight twists like a knife, reminding you that you once walked these stones as a figure of reverence. Now the same stones echo your downfall. Even the sacred flame still burns behind you in the temple, steady and eternal, indifferent to the girl who tended it. Rome makes clear that the goddess survives without you, that the city thrives on continuity, even as it erases its servants. Faces blur together as you continue. Some are openly hostile, mouths curled in sneers, eyes bright with vindication. Others are solemn, lips pressed tightly, as though mourning. Still others simply watch with blank curiosity, their expressions unreadable. Shame burns your skin where their gazes fall, yet you also sense pity in some eyes, however fleeting. It does not comfort you. Pity does not lift the sentence. It only deepens the humiliation, for pity acknowledges that you are powerless to resist what is being done to you. Occasionally, the silence breaks with laughter, sharp and cruel. A voice shouts that you should walk faster, that Rome has no patience for hesitation. Another calls out a lewd jest, twisting your vow into mockery. The priests ignore it all, their eyes forward, their pace unchanging. You are not permitted to respond. You keep walking, each insult hanging in the air until it dissolves into the murmur of the crowd. You realize then that this silence is not protection but containment, a frame within which the city may insert its own interpretation of your downfall. The weight of the gaze grows heavier the longer you walk. Your back aches from holding yourself upright. Your legs tremble from the strain of measured steps. The air feels thick, heavy with dust and smoke from vendors' braziers, but you dare not cough. To stumble, to falter, to show weakness would be seized upon instantly. Respect has long since vanished. Now every eye watches for collapse, eager to witness the moment when the girl who once embodied Rome's purity breaks under the weight of shame. Your family does not appear. Perhaps they chose absence to preserve their dignity. Perhaps they were forbidden. Perhaps they could not bear the sight. Whatever the reason, you know now that you walk alone. The city has claimed you fully, and no ties of blood or affection remain to soften your fall. You are Rome's sacrifice, and Rome does not share its offerings with families. The realization chills you more than the judgment itself. At last, you pass through the forum's heart, the crowds surging on every side. The marble temples loom above, their columns gleaming in the sun, their gods looking down with indifferent stone faces. You wonder whether the gods feel anything at all as they watch this ritual. You wonder whether Vesta herself regards you with disappointment, or whether she remains as cold and steady as her flame. The chants of the priests swell, their voices echoing off the stone, merging with the murmur of the people, until you can no longer distinguish one from the other. The city itself seems to hum with judgment. You keep your eyes lowered, but occasionally you cannot resist glancing upward. You see the shifting expressions of those who line the steps and balconies. Some turn away quickly, ashamed to be caught watching. Others hold your gaze, their eyes filled with triumph or disdain. A few look stricken, their mouths half open, as though they want to speak but cannot. None step forward, none intervene. Their faces blur together after a while, a sea of shame, pity, and curiosity, all mingling in a single wave that presses against you from every side. You keep walking, each footfall heavy, each breath deliberate, until the familiar noise of the city fades into an uncanny stillness. You arrive at the pit, the so-called mercy Rome grants. No blood spilled. The entrance yawns before you, cut into the earth beyond the city's bustle. It looks less like a place of judgment and more like a construction site abandoned by masons, a dark wound in the ground, framed by rough stone. The sun glints on the edges of the stairway, descending downward, its light unable to reach the depths. You pause at the threshold, your eyes adjusting to the shadow, and for a moment it feels as though you're peering into the mouth of the underworld itself. Rome prides itself on avoiding the spilling of your blood, but standing here, you know the cruelty lies not in violence, but in silence. The priests remain expressionless, their hands tighten on your arms, not harshly, but with a firmness that makes refusal impossible. Their chants continue, solemn phrases rolling into one another, sanctifying each motion of your descent. The rhythm of their voices is relentless, as though your erasure is simply another offering, another duty carried out with ritual precision. No one breaks the script to acknowledge you as a girl, no one falters with pity. They are cogs in the mechanism of tradition, and tradition has claimed you. The stairway is narrow and cold beneath your sandals. Each step echoes, the sound dampened as you move deeper, until the noise of the city above fades entirely. The air grows heavier with each pace, carrying the scent of damp stone and soil. You focus on the hem of your robe, brushing your legs, the small sound of fabric muffled in the stillness, because it is easier than acknowledging what awaits you below. The priests' voices follow, a steady drone as though sealing you with words before the earth itself swallows you. At the bottom, the passage opens into a small chamber. You see it in fragments at first, your eyes straining in the dim light provided by a single, flickering lamp. The walls are rough, unadorned, built not to honour, but to contain. The ceiling hangs low enough that you must bow your head. The silence here is absolute, broken only by the hiss of the flame and the faint rasp of your own breathing. This is no temple, no sanctuary. It is a holding place, a parody of shelter, where you are meant to linger until life ebbs out of you unseen. You take in the furnishings one by one. A narrow pallet of wood and straw rests against one wall, its surface uneven and unwelcoming. A small table bears a loaf of bread and a clay jug of water, provisions offered as though they are acts of kindness. A second lamp burns faintly, its light wavering, casting shadows that make the chamber seem smaller still. These objects are not gifts of mercy, but tokens meant to disguise cruelty. They give the appearance of care while denying you any true chance of survival. Rome congratulates itself on sparing your blood while condemning you to a slower, quieter death. You are guided into the room, the priests stepping with rehearsed precision. Their voices do not falter, their hands do not shake. They place you before the palette, as though presenting you to an unseen audience, and their chants rise to a final cadence. You know they will leave you here. You know that once they ascend the stairs, the earth will close behind them, sealing you in silence. The thought presses heavily on your chest, but still you do not resist. Resistance would only degrade the solemnity, and dignity is the last shield that you have left. The bread, the water, the pallet, the lamp, each object is meant to prove that Rome does not murder its holy women. Yet to your eyes they are grotesque parodies of hospitality. The bread will harden, the water will stale, the pallet will not comfort, and the lamp will gutter out long before you do. They are not gifts but mockeries, symbols of the city's self-righteousness. By giving you these things, Rome can tell itself it has not killed you, even as it prepares the earth to swallow you whole. The chamber is smaller than you imagined, smaller than the stories made it seem. It feels like a cell designed to compress you into silence, a room too narrow for pacing, too dark for distraction. Already, the air tastes heavy, tinged with dust and smoke from the lamp. The walls press inward, not with movement, but with stillness, an oppressive immobility that makes your own body feel larger, clumsier, out of place. You realize that even before they seal the entrance, you are already entombed. The priests finish their final words, bow their heads, and begin to retreat. Their robes brush the stone as they pass, their sandals thudding softly on the steps. They do not look back. You watch their figures retreat into shadow, their voices fading into the distance, until the chamber is silent again. A sliver of daylight lingers at the top of the stairwell, pale and thin, a reminder of the world you've already lost. You know it will not last. The workers begin their task in earnest now. Stones scrape against one another. Dust sifts down, and the light begins to narrow. You tilt your head upward, watching as the circle of sky contracts, edges darkening as each block is lowered into place. The sound is methodical, merciless. No voice announces your name. No cry marks your passing. The only acknowledgement of your existence is the sound of stone grinding against stone, sealing you away. The light shrinks further, a pale disc framed by shadow, then a thin line, then a sliver. You hold your breath, straining to keep that last trace of day in your sight. For as long as it lingers, you feel tethered to life, connected still to the city above. The final stone slides into place with a dull thud, and the shaft of light vanishes. The earth closes, the stairway disappears. The chamber is whole again, its silence absolute. Darkness wraps you whole. The pallet is cold, the lamp faint, dust in your throat. The last trace of daylight has vanished beneath stone, and with it, any lingering connection to the city above. The earth presses around you on all sides, a weight so vast you cannot measure it. For the first time since your selection, the world is utterly still. No voices chant, no sandals scrape, no priests mutter prayers. Only your own breathing fills the chamber, shallow and uneven, echoing faintly against the damp stone. You lower yourself onto the pallet, its frame rough beneath the thin layer of straw. The wood creaks softly, the sound amplified in the silence, making you flinch as though the chamber itself had spoken. The straw scratches your skin, offering no comfort, only the reminder that this mockery of a bed is not meant for rest, but for display. You shift, searching for a position that does not ache, but there is none. The cold seeps into your bones until you feel hollowed, like a vessel abandoned. You press your palms against the straw as though grounding yourself, but the texture feels foreign, alien, nothing like the bedding of your childhood home. The lamp flickers at your side, casting a weak, unsteady light across the walls. Its glow stretches only a few paces before surrendering to shadow. Beyond that faint circle, the chamber dissolves into blackness. The flame gutters whenever you move, as though even the slight shift of your breath threatens its survival. You find yourself watching it intently, the way it trembles, the way soot curls upward in delicate threads. It is the only thing here that seems alive, the last fragile echo of the sacred flame you once tended in the temple. Yet this one is not eternal. You know it will fail long before you do. Dust coats your throat, clinging with every breath. You cough softly, but the sound is swallowed instantly, absorbed by the heavy air. The cough leaves your chest raw, your tongue thick and dry. You look at the jug of water set on the small table, its clay surface dull in the lamplight. For a moment, you consider drinking, but you resist. To touch it would feel like admitting you intend to live, and that thought is unbearable. The water is not a gift, it is part of the performance, proof to Rome that you were left provisioned, as though survival were possible here. To drink from it would be to accept the charade. Time becomes strange in the chamber. Without the sun's passage, without the sound of footsteps or voices, the hours blur. You count heartbeats at first, but soon lose track. You listen to your own breathing, to the faint hiss of the lamp, but they offer no measure. Each moment stretches endlessly, elastic and uncertain, until you cannot tell whether minutes or hours have passed. You imagine the city above, bustling with noise and light, continuing, its life unbroken. The thought is dizzying. Rome feasts, argues, prays, and laughs while you sit here entombed, forgotten already by all but the walls. You try to pray, whispering the formulas that once came so easily. The words feel brittle now, empty shells echoing against stone. You close your eyes, reciting syllables with precision, but no comfort follows. The goddess is silent. You wonder if she listens at all, or if she turns her face away, content with the flames still burning in the temple above. Perhaps she has already abandoned you. Perhaps she never cared for individuals, only symbols, only the continuity of ritual. The thought sinks into you, heavy and corrosive, but you cannot drive it away. The air thickens with each passing hour, or what you think are hours. The chamber seems smaller now, the walls pressing closer. You shift on the pallet, your joints aching, the straw digging into your skin, but the movement does not ease your discomfort. It only stirs more dust, filling your nose and throat until you choke quietly. Tears stinging your eyes. You press your sleeve against your mouth to muffle the sound. Though no one is left to hear, still, silence feels demanded, as though the very stone expects it. You try to distract yourself with memory, calling up fragments of the life you once lived. You picture your mother's loom, the smell of oil on the threads, the faint rhythm of her shuttle. You recall the warmth of the sun on your shoulders during your first festival, the way the crowd murmured with admiration as you took your seat. You think of the sacred flame, steady and unyielding, its light reflecting on polished bronze. Each memory rises briefly, then twists into bitterness, for all of them belong to a world from which you've been erased. Memory becomes a cruelty rather than a comfort. You glance again at the lamp, its flame lower now, its circle of light smaller. The shadows creep closer, stretching long across the stone, threatening to swallow the small glow entirely. You feel a sudden, irrational panic, as though once the lamp dies you will vanish too, extinguished alongside it. You clutch your knees to your chest, pressing your forehead against them, willing the flame to last longer. Your breath quickens, and the chamber feels hotter, though you know it cannot be. Panic and stillness twist together until you feel trapped not only by stone, but by your own body. The bread lies untouched on the table, its crust already hardening. The sight of it makes your stomach churn. Hunger will come soon, but for now you refuse it. To eat would be to concede that this parody of life has substance, and you cannot bear the thought. You turn away, but in the silence, the smell of stale grain lingers faintly, a reminder of the slow erosion awaiting you. Every object in the chamber, the pallet, the jug, the loaf, the lamp, feels less like provision and more like mockery placed here to turn your suffering into ritual order. You begin to notice the rhythm of your own body with painful clarity, the beat of your heart against your ribs, the rasp of your breath, the creak of your bones as you shift restlessly on the straw. In the absence of other sounds, these small noises grow loud, filling the chamber with reminders that you're still alive. Yet even they feel fragile, uncertain, as though they could cease at any moment. You realise that in this silence, existence itself feels tenuous. You're not sustained. You are suspended, waiting. Occasionally you imagine noises beyond the stone, footsteps above, muffled voices, the faint creak of wood. You strain to listen, but the sounds never repeat, never resolve into anything real. They are ghosts of the world outside, echoes of a city you will never see again. The silence rushes back each time, heavier for having been briefly broken. You come to understand that silence is not absence alone. It is presence, thick, pressing, unrelenting, as though the stone itself is alive and leaning closer. The lamp gutters again, its flame shivering, its light trembling against the rough walls. You lean towards it instinctively, as though your presence might steady it, but the flame cares nothing for you. It rises and falls with the faintest currents of air, indifferent to your fear. You wonder how long it will last, whether it will fail within hours or endure into another day. The uncertainty gnaws at you. Its survival has become bound to your own, though you know that when it dies you will still remain, left to face the dark alone. You curl onto the pallet, the straw rustling harshly in the silence. Your body aches from stillness, yet there is nowhere to move, nowhere to go. You feel the rough wall against your back, the cold seeping through the stone into your skin. Your hands grip the edge of the pallet as though to anchor yourself against the crushing stillness. You listen to the faint hiss of the lamp, the only sound left, and cling to it desperately. The air thins. Prayers dissolve into rasping gasps as panic claws your chest. At first, you tell yourself, it is imagination. Surely there must be enough air. The chamber is small, but the stone cannot have swallowed it all so quickly. Yet your lungs rebel, drawing shorter, sharper breaths, each one less satisfying than the last. You whisper a prayer to Vesta, forcing the words through a dry throat. But halfway through, your voice cracks, and the syllables collapse into a cough. Your chest heaves, and the prayer ends not with reverence but with a choking rasp. You press your hand against your sternum as if to steady yourself, but the thudding of your heart only accelerates the panic. You try again, reciting another formula, one you have known since childhood, but the words crumble before you finish. You realise, with a creeping dread, that prayer has become impossible. The goddess demands composure, but composure is slipping beyond your grasp. The air is no longer enough for voice, no longer enough for dignity. You can only gulp in shallow draughts, desperate and unsatisfying, your lips parting again and again as though the chamber has suddenly shrunk to nothing. The lamp wavers, its flame drawing greedily from the same dwindling supply. Each flicker reminds you that you are in competition with it, that even this small light is your rival now. You resent its survival, the way it still manages to shine while your lungs burn. For years you tended fire as Rome's protector. Now a single flame mocks you. consuming the air that should have been yours. You resist the urge to snuff it out, knowing the darkness would destroy what little courage you have left. Still, bitterness coils inside you, sharper than hunger, more urgent than thirst. Your body begins to betray you. Your hands tremble, your legs twitch with restless energy, your muscles straining against confinement. You pace briefly, 3 steps across, then turn, then 3 steps back. But the effort only makes your breath harsher, your throat raw. You collapse again onto the pallet, pressing your back against the cold wall, but the stone offers no relief. Each inhalation grows more ragged, and the silence that once seemed oppressive now feels lethal. You realize that the stillness of this place is not passive, it is active, smothering you one shallow breath at a time. Memories surface unbidden, sharper than before, distorted by lack of air. You recall the sunlight on the steps of the temple, the murmur of crowds parting to let you pass, the bow of magistrates with their fasces lowered. For a moment you almost feel the warmth of that attention again, but it twists quickly into bitterness. Rome adored you only to consume you. Its respect was conditional, fragile, ready to collapse into suspicion at the faintest whisper. You see now that every bow, every lowered voice was another chain disguised as reverence. And now the same city that once bowed its head leaves you to claw at shadows for breath. You gasp again, the sound ugly and loud in the chamber, echoing against the walls. Your lips crack as you drag in air that does not satisfy. The dust burns in your nose and your chest feels tighter with each attempt. You clutch the edge of the pallet, your nails digging into wood, and realize how quickly dignity has fled. You once told yourself you would face this with composure, but composure shatters easily when lungs scream for air. You writhe against the straw, your body arching with the frantic need for relief. And no one is there to witness it but the lamp. Your throat grows raw, each attempt at speech dissolving into wheezes. You try again to pray, but what emerges is only a broken string of syllables, half words gasped between desperate gulps. The formulas dissolve into nonsense, and your voice collapses entirely. You tilt your head back, staring into the shadows above, and your lips move soundlessly, mouthing words that will never reach a goddess, never escape the chamber, never touch another human ear. Even your prayers are suffocated now, silenced as thoroughly as your breath. The lamp flares suddenly, then steadies again, as though mocking your weakness. The small flame seems arrogant in its survival, while you, who once embodied Rome's flame, curl gasping on a straw pallet. You feel a sudden surge of fury, but it collapses quickly into despair. You know the lamp will outlast you, its light flickering alone after your lungs still. The thought crushes you, for it proves how easily Rome replaces its guardians. The eternal flame will burn without you, just as this small lamp will glow without you, until even it forgets you ever sat beside it. Your chest tightens further, and panic rises until you claw at the walls with your fingernails. Dust crumbles beneath your touch, the stone rough against your skin. You drag your hands down, leaving faint scratches as though marking your presence in a place designed to erase you. The effort exhausts you instantly, your arms falling limp at your sides. You slump back onto the pallet, trembling, gasping, the dust thick in your mouth. You know now that you will not leave any marks strong enough to resist erasure. Rome has made certain of that. The silence deepens around you, no longer passive but crushing. Your body twitches with every gasp, your ribs straining, your eyes watering. You tilt your head upward again, hoping for some sound above, a footstep, a voice, a reminder that the world continues. But no sound comes. The earth above you is impenetrable. The city has sealed you away so completely that even your final struggles cannot disturb it. You are alone in every sense, abandoned to a death that will leave no trace, no echo, no witness. Your gasps grow weaker. Each breath feels shallow, incomplete, more effort than relief. You mouth prayers again, but no sound follows. Your voice has been taken from you, stolen by the thinness of the air, swallowed by stone. Your chest heaves silently, your lips trembling as you try to shape words that no longer matter. For years, Rome demanded that you be silent in duty, silent in accusation, silent in judgment. Now at the very end, silence claims you completely. Above, Rome continues. Markets bustle, senators argue, games roar, prayers rise in the temples, children laugh in the streets. The flame you tended still burns, steady and eternal, guarded now by other hands. The goddess is honoured, the empire thrives, and life continues unbroken, but you are forgotten. And that brings us to the end of tonight's quiet descent beneath Rome, where the silence of a sealed chamber spoke louder than prayers, and where a single whisper could undo a life sworn to eternity. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.